Invisibility is a superpower when you know how to use it. Powerful men don't look at waitresses were furniture with pulses, extensions of the silverware, present but unseen. At the Obsidian Room, New York's most exclusive underground dining club hidden beneath a century-old Manhattan hotel, that invisibility kept Elena Vasquez alive. It also meant she saw everything: the hand that drifted over the wine decanter, the tiny vial palmed between manicured fingers, the faint metallic shimmer as the powder dissolved into a $2,000 Barolo. Elena counted the grains in her mind. 1 second, 2 seconds, calculating the exact dosage, enough to turn a mafia boss into a breathing corpse, enough to trap a man inside his own body while his empire crumbled around him. She should have walked away, should have refilled water glasses, collected her paycheck, gone home to her daughter Lily, who was waiting with Mrs. Kowalski in their cramped Queens apartment. The little girl with asthma who needed medicine Elena could barely afford. The reason she worked under a stolen name, lived as a ghost, and never looked powerful men in the eye. But Elena watched Dominic Aurelio Cavetti reach for that glass. The silent king himself, boss of one of New York's 5 families, the man whose gray eyes could order death without a single word. She watched his fingers, marked with faded scars, close around the crystal stem, and she made a choice that would destroy everything she'd built to stay hidden. If this hook pulled you in, smash that like button and share with someone who loves dark romance. Subscribe now, the full story drops soon, and you won't want to miss what happens when the ghost saves the devil. Elena moved in a heartbeat. She deliberately caught her foot on the leg of the table. The tray of ice water in her hands hurled straight toward Dominic Cavetti. Cold cubes spilled into his lap as water sprayed across his expensive Tom Ford suit. The $2,000 glass of Barolo flew from his hand and shattered on the marble floor with a sharp, jarring crash. Red wine spread like blood beneath the warm golden lights. The entire VIP room froze. The 5 most dangerous men in New York turned toward her at once. Elena felt the weight of each gaze press down on her shoulders like boulders. She dropped to her knees immediately, feigning panic, her hands trembling as she gathered the broken shards of glass, while her heart hammered wildly in her chest. Victor Cavetti was the first to react. He sprang to his feet with his face flushed red, his voice roaring with outrage. "What is this? Fire the girl right now. An incompetent employee like this does not deserve to set foot in here." Yet, Elena saw what the others did not. Victor's hand trembled slightly, not from anger but from fear, his eyes flicking down to the pool of red on the floor, where the poison was now seeping into the marble instead of flowing into Dominic's body, the tremor of someone whose plan had just been ruined. Elena knew she was right, as the whole room waited, no one daring to breathe too loudly, because the Silent King was famous not for loud rages, but for the quiet that came before someone vanished forever. Dominic Cavetti remained seated, wine staining his suit, the ice slowly melting on his thigh, but he did not look down at the expensive clothes being destroyed. He looked straight at Elena, with steel, cold, gray eyes, unblinking, unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice low, and even in a way that was terrifying. "Leave her alone. Everyone out." Victor stopped mid-sentence, his mouth open like a fish gasping. "Dominic, you cannot," I said. "Out." Dominic did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The silence after those words was more frightening than any shout. One by one, they stood. Enzo, Dominic's right-hand man, the first to leave, pulling 2 other capos with him. Victor the slowest, his eyes sliding over Elena one last time before he stepped through the door. She caught something in that look. Not anger, something colder, deeper. The look of a man who had just marked a new target. The oak door clicked shut softly. The VIP room suddenly felt vast and hollow in a way that stole the breath, leaving only Elena kneeling among the broken glass and Dominic Cavetti seated like a king on a blood-soaked throne. He did not stand. He did not need to. His presence alone was enough to fill the entire room. Dominic tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were a strange creature. Then he spoke again, each word falling like drops of ice water. "You did not trip." Elena stopped breathing. "You chose to fall." Dominic rose and walked toward her, each footstep sounding like a countdown, stopping directly in front of her and looking down from a height of 1.88 meters. Why? A simple question, but Elena knew the answer could decide whether she would walk out of this room or be carried out. So she stood slowly, her legs trembling a little though she forced her voice to stay steady. "I really did trip. The floor is slippery." Dominic said nothing. He only looked at her. Elena felt as if she were being stripped layer by layer beneath those gray eyes. Because he had survived 36 years in this world by reading people, and she knew that in that moment he was reading her like an open book. Dominic took one more step toward her. Elena had to hold herself still to keep from backing away. The distance between them now less than a meter. Close enough for her to catch the faint scent of sandalwood on him, close enough to see the pale scar running along the line of his left jaw. He tipped his head, watching her with the patience of a predator who knows its prey has nowhere to run. "I saw your eyes change when you looked at the glass," his voice low and level, not a flicker of feeling in it. "You were not afraid of spilling it. You were afraid of what would happen if you did not spill it. And those two things are not the same at all." Elena swallowed hard, her throat dry and bitter, searching for another lie. But those gray eyes seemed to pierce every layer of disguise she had painstakingly built over the past 2 years. Dominic Cavetti had not become the silent king by believing clumsy lies. "You knew there was something in the wine," he went on, not asking but stating it. What was it? There was only silence as Elena felt as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff. One wrong step and she would fall into a bottomless abyss. Yet lying again would not be any better, because this man had survived 36 years in a world where trusting the wrong person meant death. He read people the way other men read books, and she was a book being turned page by page. "I used to be a nurse," Elena finally said, her voice smaller than she wanted. "An emergency nurse at Mount Sinai. 7 years. Dominic said nothing, simply waited, and I recognized the smell." Elena drew a deep breath. When the powder dissolved into the wine, there was a very faint shimmer, slightly purple, and a metallic scent, so light you would almost miss it unless you knew what you were looking for. "I have seen patients poisoned with it. Thallium." Dominic's eyes narrowed a fraction, the only reaction he allowed her. "Who?" "I do not know." Elena shook her head, honest this time. "I only saw a hand, the darkness, my angle. I did not see a face." She braced for rage, for rapid-fire questions, for threats. But Dominic did something she did not expect. He smiled. Not a warm smile, a smile cold as ice that never reached his eyes. The smile of a man who has just confirmed a suspicion that has been smoldering for a long time. "So someone wants me to die slowly. Interesting." He turned and walked to the liquor cabinet in the corner, as if he had just been told the weather instead of the fact that someone was poisoning him. Elena stood rigid, not knowing how to react. Dominic poured himself a glass of whiskey, lifted it to the light to study the amber color, then drank it down in a single swallow, setting the glass back with a soft tap, still with his back to her. "You saved my life." His voice still even, unchanged. "I owe you." "I do not need you to owe me anything," Elena said quickly, survival screaming in her head. "I just want to go home. Forget this. I will not tell anyone." Dominic turned back, leaning against the cabinet with his arms crossed over his chest, his gaze sweeping over her from head to toe, assessing, calculating. "I have a proposal. You do not get to answer yes or no. You help me find who is poisoning me, and in return I pay you 10 times your current salary, and I protect you." "No," Elena said at once, without thinking. "I have a child. I cannot get tangled up in this. I just want to work in peace, raise my child, get through the days. Your world is not where I belong." Dominic was silent for a moment, his finger tapping lightly against the rim of the empty glass. Then he spoke, his tone almost weightless, yet every word drove straight into Elena's chest. "Marco D'Angelo." Elena went still, the blood in her veins turning to ice. "You are hiding from him, aren't you?" Dominic continued, his eyes never leaving her. "Elena Vasquez, former Mount Sinai nurse, vanished 2 years ago with her daughter. Your ex-husband is Marco D'Angelo, a low-level soldier for the Russo family. He has been hunting you everywhere. Right now you are living in a miserable apartment in Queens under a false name, working here to avoid a background check." He paused, letting each word soak into her like poison. "Your daughter, Lily, 5 years old, asthma. She needs expensive medication every month and you are barely managing to pay for it." Elena wanted to say something, to ask how he knew, to deny it, to run, but her feet felt nailed to the floor and her throat closed as if someone had clamped a hand around it, because Dominic Cavetti knew everything about her, from beginning to end. And she, who had spent 2 years becoming a ghost, was now standing bare before the most dangerous man in New York. "How do you know?" Elena finally found her voice again, even though it came out weaker and more unsteady than she wanted to admit. Dominic tilted his head slightly, as if the question were so obvious it hardly deserved an answer. I investigate every new employee who sets foot in any place I frequent, from the dishwasher to the manager. That is why I am still alive after 36 years in this world." He walked to the table, took a sheet of paper from the drawer, and laid it on the tabletop. Elena recognized it as a file with her photo pinned in the upper corner, a picture from back when she worked at Mount Sinai, her hair shorter, her face fuller, her eyes not yet ringed with the dark shadows of relentless sleeplessness. "Elena Vasquez," Dominic read aloud, his voice as even as if he were reading a weather report. "Born in 1997, graduated nursing with honors. 7 years in the Mount Sinai Emergency Department, highly regarded by supervisors and colleagues. Married Marco D'Angelo at the age of 22. One daughter named Lily, currently 5 years old." He turned the page. 2 years ago, you disappeared. Quit without notice, abandoned your apartment, cut off all contact, resurfaced under the name Maria Santos, working as a waitress in restaurants that do not run background checks, currently renting an apartment in Queens under a false name, paying cash, with no formal lease. Elena felt as if she had just been stripped bare in front of an enemy. Everything she had tried to build, every layer of disguise, every false name, every trace she had carefully erased, all of it meaningless. "Your ex-husband, Marco D'Angelo," Dominic continued. Elena felt the blood in her body drop a few degrees at the sound of that name. A low-level soldier for the Russo family, notorious for a violent temper and for not knowing how to keep his hands to himself. "He has been looking for you all over the city for 2 years. He really wants you back, does he not?" "Not back," Elena heard herself say, bitter and exhausted. "Back belongs to him. Those two things are different." And in that instant, the memories crashed over her like a tidal wave. The last night in the apartment with Marco. She remembered her own face in the mirror, bruised and swollen. Dried blood crusted on her split lip. Lily was curled up in the corner, crying without a sound. She had learned that crying loud only made Daddy angrier. Marco's roar from the other room. "You belong to me. You hear me? You are not going anywhere." And she had picked Lily up and run into the rain that night with nothing but a handbag and a few $100s in cash. Never looking back even as Marco's shouting echoed behind her. She had been running for 2 years when Dominic's voice yanked her back to the present. "Changing your name, changing your work, living like a ghost. You did well, but Marco is still searching, and the Russo family." He paused for a beat. "They would be more than happy to hand you over to him to curry favor with a loyal soldier." Elena understood that. The Russo family were Cavetti's enemies, and she, as the ex-wife of a Russo man, was an asset that could be traded. "What do you want from me?" she asked, forcing her voice steady even as something inside her fell apart. "I already told you." Dominic gave a small shrug. "You help me find out who is poisoning me, who among those close to me wants me dead, and in return I protect you and your daughter from Marco, from Russo, from anyone who wants to touch you. And if I refuse?" Dominic looked at her for a long time, not a trace of emotion on his cold, handsome face. "Then you walk out that door and handle it yourself. I will not stop you, but I will not help you either." He went to the window and looked out into the darkness beyond it. "I am giving you 48 hours, 72 at most, before Marco finds your new address. He is very close already. And when he does," Dominic turned back to look at her, "what do you think he will do to the little girl?" Elena felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Lily, her daughter, a 5-year-old innocent who only knew how to dream about sharks and strawberry ice cream, the child Marco had once threatened to take away if Elena ever dared to leave him. She had no choice. She never had. In this world, the weak survived only by finding shelter under the wing of someone stronger. And right now, Dominic Cavetti was the strongest she could reach. "Fine," Elena heard herself say, and she realized this was the first time in 2 years she had stopped running. "I will help you." Dominic nodded without a hint of surprise, as if he had known the answer all along. "Good. From now on, you are under my protection. No one touches you." He said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Tomorrow my men will come for you and the little girl. Bring what you need. You will stay in my estate until we find the traitor." Elena stood there in the VIP room stained with red wine, staring at the man who had bought her life with a promise of protection. She did not know whether to feel relieved that she was finally out of Marco's reach, or terrified that she had just stepped into the territory of another devil. Maybe both. Maybe in this world that was the only choice she had. A glossy black Mercedes pulled up in front of the rundown apartment in Queens at 8 o'clock the next morning, a bright jewel in a neighborhood of soot and gray. Elena had been awake all night packing. though the truth was they did not have much to take. 2 small suitcases, a few changes of clothes, Lily's asthma medication, and the worn old teddy bear her little girl could not sleep without. The whole life of a mother and daughter reduced to 2 suitcases. Mrs. Kowalski stood at the window of the next apartment, her worried, aged eyes fixed on the luxury car and the 2 men in black suits posted outside. Then she hurried over, took Elena's hand, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, what is going on? Who are those men?" Elena tried to shape a reassuring smile even as something inside her twisted tight. "Everything will be fine, Mrs. Kowalski. This is a new job opportunity. Better pay, a better place for Lily. I will call you when we are settled." The old woman looked at her with eyes that had seen too much suffering in one lifetime. Elena knew she did not believe her, but she still wrapped Elena in an embrace and whispered in Polish mixed with English, "Be careful, girl, and keep the little one safe." Lily was the opposite. The 5-year-old skipped down the stairs, her wide eyes shining when she saw the sleek car. "Mom, we get to ride in that? It is so pretty, like a princess car." Elena gathered her daughter into her arms, kissed the soft hair, and felt her heart break and give thanks at the same time, because Lily did not know what fear was. She did not yet understand how cruel this world could be. Elena swore she would do anything to make sure her child never had to. The drive took nearly an hour to reach Long Island. Lily dozing against Elena's shoulder while Elena stared through the window and watched the city slowly give way to tree-lined roads and lavish mansions hidden behind tall iron fences. When the car stopped at the gates of the Cavetti estate, Elena had to fight not to gape, because it was not a house. It was a Renaissance palace uprooted from Italy and planted in American soil. White marble columns holding up a soaring arch, stained glass windows catching the early sun, gardens trimmed to perfection down to the last blossom with an angel fountain at the center. Yet beneath that splendor, Elena sensed something else. A chill. Stone walls so thick they seemed to imprison centuries of secrets. Men in black suits stationed at every corner with dead eyes and guns hidden under their jackets. A palace, yes, but also a mausoleum. And she had just walked in of her own will. Dominic met them in the main hall, his face as cold as the night before, yet he gave Elena a small nod with something that came close to respect. "Your room and the little girl's are in the east wing on the 2nd floor, next to mine if you need anything." Then he looked down at Lily tucked against her mother's leg, and his gray eyes softened just a fraction. "What is she like? Ice cream or cake?" Lily lifted her face to the tall, frightening man and was not afraid at all. "I like sharks." Before Elena could react, other members of the family began to appear. First, Victor Cavetti, Dominic's uncle, 61 years old yet still carrying the polished elegance of a European gentleman. He came forward wearing the warmest smile Elena had seen and took her hand in both of his. "Ah, this must be the new doctor Dominic mentioned. Welcome to the family, my dear girl." His voice was sweet as honey, but Elena knew at once. Those eyes, that hand, that build, this was the man she had seen tipping powder into the wine the night before. And now he stood in front of her, smiling as if nothing had happened, while eyes as cold as a snake's measured her every movement. Elena forced the smile to stay on her lips, even as she shivered inside. "Thank you, sir." Next came Dante, Dominic's brother, 29, but looking older than his years from nights of excess. He wandered in with a whiskey glass in his hand, though it was only 10 in the morning, eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled. When he saw Elena, he stopped, his gaze dragging over her from head to toe, with a hunger he did not bother to hide. "Oh, so Big Brother hires a doctor this pretty now," he sneered, his breath thick with alcohol. "Do you need to examine me, doctor?" Dominic did nothing more than glance at him. Dante folded in on himself like a scolded dog and slipped away. Elena let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Dante was spoiled and weak, but at least he was not dangerous. Not like Victor. Then a woman stepped out of the hallway, and Elena braced herself for the next wave of contempt. But Isabella Cavetti, 58, in a simple nun's habit, did something Elena did not expect. She looked Elena straight in the eyes, then looked down at Lily. The sternness in her face softened. "Is this the little one?" She knelt to Lily's height, her voice warm as spring. "Are you hungry? Sister Isabella has warm milk and cookies in the kitchen. Would you like to come with me?" Lily glanced up at Elena for permission. When her mother nodded, she took Isabella's hand at once, as if she had known her all her life. "Do you know about sharks?" Lily asked as she was led away. "I know a lot." Elena watched her daughter disappear down the corridor. For the first time since stepping into the house, she felt she could breathe, but it did not last. Because Victor came to her when the others were gone and set a hand on her shoulder with an intimacy that was too much. "Welcome to the family, my dear girl," he said, his voice still sweet as honey. "I hope you will be happy here, very happy." Elena felt as if a snake were licking her skin. Cold and terrible. She knew the real war had only just begun. The room Elena was assigned sat in the east wing of the estate, 3 times larger than the old apartment in Queens, with windows overlooking a rose garden and a private bathroom laid in marble. Lily's room was right next door with a connecting door, the little girl squealing with delight at the sight of a princess bed draped in a canopy and piled high with stuffed bears. But Elena refused to be fooled by luxury, because this was still a prison, only a prison gilded in gold. Dominic introduced her to the rest of the family as his personal medical specialist, and no one questioned it, because in this world, when the silent king said something, it became the truth. Elena began work on the very first day, asking Dominic to allow a full health screening, which he agreed to without a single question. In a prepared office stocked with medical equipment, she drew his blood, snipped a small lock of hair from the nape of his neck, and gently scraped beneath his fingernails. Dominic sat in silence through it all, gray eyes following her every movement with a mix of curiosity and caution. "What do you need those samples for?" he asked, as she sealed them carefully into tamper-proof bags. "Toxin testing," Elena answered honestly. "Hair can show exposure history over many months. Nails, too. If someone is poisoning you, I will find evidence." Dominic nodded and said nothing more. That night, when the entire estate had fallen into silence, and Lily slept soundly in the next room, Elena sat in the dark with the burner phone she had hidden in her underwear drawer, dialing the only number she still knew by heart: Sarah Chen, her college roommate, now a toxicology physician at New York Presbyterian, and the only person from her former life Elena still spoke to. After 3 rings, Sarah's sleepy voice came through. "Elena, my God, you are calling at 2 in the morning. Are you okay?" "I need your help, Sarah," Elena said fast, whispering. "Toxin testing. Hair and nail samples. No questions, no reporting, no paper trail." There was a long silence on the other end, as Elena felt the weight of what she was asking, knowing she was pushing Sarah into an impossible place but having no other choice. "What are you involved in, Elena?" Sarah finally said, worry sharpening her words. "I cannot tell you, but I need you to trust me, please." Again silence, then a sigh. "Send the samples to my private lab address. I will handle it. But Elena, whatever you are doing, be careful." 3 days later, the results arrived by encrypted email. Elena opened the file in the bathroom with the door locked tight, her heart thudding against her ribs. When she read the lines on the screen, the blood in her body seemed to turn cold. Thallium sulfate, the concentration in the hair sample indicating continuous exposure over roughly 6 to 8 months, the current level nearing the threshold for permanent organ damage. She slid down to the floor with her back against the cold wall, fighting for steady breaths. Thallium, the king of poisons, odorless, tasteless, dissolving completely in liquid, a victim dying slowly in agony without ever knowing why. With this dosage, Elena calculated, Dominic had about 2 to 3 months if untreated, symptoms growing worse by degrees. Numbness in hands and feet, hair falling out, violent abdominal pain, then organ failure, and finally death. Slow, painful, like being burned alive from the inside. That night, Elena found Dominic in the library, sitting alone in the dark with a glass of whiskey in his hand. No lights on, only firelight from the hearth dancing over the sharp planes of his face. She closed the door and crossed to the chair opposite him. "I have the results." Dominic did not look at her, his eyes fixed on the flames. "Say it." "Thallium sulfate," Elena said, forcing her voice into professional steadiness while something inside her clenched. "The levels in your hair show someone has been poisoning you for at least 6 months, possibly longer. Low doses but steady, enough to kill without raising suspicion." Dominic still did not look at her, his fingers tapping the side of the glass with the regularity of a countdown clock. "So, I am dying." Not a question. His tone flat, as if he were talking about the weather or today's stock prices. Elena had seen patients receive terminal cancer diagnoses with less composure than that. "Not necessarily," she said quickly. "There is an antidote, Prussian blue. It binds thallium in the body and helps eliminate it through the digestive tract. If we start treatment immediately and stop the exposure source, you can recover." He latched onto the word "stop the exposure source," turning at last to look at her. Elena saw something in those gray eyes that was not fear and not anger, only the deep exhaustion of a man who had carried too much for too long. "Victor," he said, almost a whisper. "It has to be him. Are you certain? I eat dinner with him every day." Dominic set the glass down and leaned back, eyes lifting to the ceiling. "He is the only one who always pours my wine himself. Says it is family tradition. Respect." He gave a humorless, bitter little laugh. "Turns out family tradition is killing your nephew slowly." "Why do you not take him now?" Elena asked, unable to understand his terrifying calm. "You know he is killing you, and you still let him walk free." Dominic looked at her. For the first time, Elena felt the true weight in those eyes. Because in this world, killing family without clear proof is an invitation to war. He is the consigliere. "My uncle, the man many in the family respect. If I act on suspicion alone, half the family will turn on me, and then what?" He rose and went to the window, staring into the darkness outside. 200 men depend on me. Their families, their children. If the Cavetti family collapses in civil war, the Russo family will swallow everything. He turned back to her, his gaze heavy. "I cannot afford to be wrong, even if it means I have to die." 2 weeks passed inside the Cavetti estate. Elena slowly found a new rhythm of living within those cold stone walls, each morning bringing Dominic a dark blue pill and telling him, and anyone else who asked, that it was a multivitamin for someone under constant strain, when in truth it was Prussian blue that Sarah had secretly mailed to her, packed inside a dietary supplement bottle to avoid suspicion. Dominic swallowed it without questions, trusting her in a way Elena would never have expected from a mafia boss. Or maybe he simply no longer had the strength to care whether he lived or died. That night, Elena jolted awake at 2 a.m. with a strangled scream caught in her throat, the nightmare returning as it did every night. Marco. His face twisted with fury, his fists, Lily's crying in the corner. She lay in the dark with cold sweat soaking her nightgown, her heart hammering madly. While beside her, Lily slept on, a tiny hand clenched around her teddy bear. Elena slipped out of bed as gently as she could, not wanting to wake her child, because she needed air, needed to escape the walls closing in on her. The library on the first floor, the place she had discovered in her first days exploring the estate, had become her refuge on sleepless nights. Thousands of books stacked from floor to ceiling, the scent of old paper and leather, the fireplace always kept lit. But tonight, when Elena pushed the door open and stepped inside, she realized she was not alone. Dominic sat in the armchair beside the hearth, a book open on his lap though his eyes were not on the page. He was staring into the flames, his face half lit and half shadowed in the flicker. At the sound of the door, he turned. Elena saw those gray eyes were not as cold as they were by day. They were tired, hollow. She paused in the doorway, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. "I did not know anyone was in here. I will go." "No need." Dominic shook his head slightly and gestured to the chair across from him. "I cannot sleep either." "Sit." Elena hesitated for a beat, then went in and lowered herself into the chair he indicated, the warmth of the fire licking at her skin and pushing back some of the chill left behind by the nightmare. They sat in silence for a long time, neither speaking, only the soft crackle of wood and the night wind outside the windows. For the first time since she entered this house, Elena did not feel judged or interrogated. Only two people who could not sleep sitting together in the dark. "What does the little girl like?" Dominic said suddenly, breaking the quiet. Elena blinked, surprised by the question. "Lily?" He nodded, eyes still on the fire. "I saw her talking to Isabella all day about something, but I could not make it out." "Sharks." Elena let out a small laugh, thinking of her daughter with all the love in her body. She is obsessed with sharks. Shark movies, shark books, shark drawings. She says she wants to be a shark researcher when she grows up. Last week she wanted to be a shark. Dominic turned to look at her, one corner of his mouth lifting, almost a smile. "Why sharks?" "Because sharks do not need anyone to protect them." Elena looked down at her hands, her voice smaller now. "Lily says Mom should be a shark, instead of prey." The silence returned. But when Elena looked up, she found Dominic watching her with an expression she had never seen on him before. Not coldness, not calculation, only the understanding of someone who has known what it is to be powerless. "My mother's name was Maria," he said abruptly, his voice low and far away. "She was the gentlest woman I ever knew. She sang me to sleep every night, told Italian fairy tales, made cannoli every Sunday." Elena did not speak. She only listened, sensing this was something Dominic rarely offered anyone. "My father beat her for 12 years. His tone stayed even, but his fingers tightened into a fist. Every night I heard her crying through the wall. Every morning I saw new bruises she tried to hide with makeup, and I could not do anything. I was only a child. He stared into the fire as if he were staring into the past. She died when I was 12. My father said it was an accident, fell down the stairs, but I saw the bruises on her neck. I knew the truth. Elena felt her chest tighten, because she understood that pain, that helplessness, the feeling of not being able to protect the person you love. I swore that from that day on I would never let anyone beat a woman in front of me again. Dominic turned to look at her. That is why I became what I am now. A monster, but a monster other people have to fear, instead of the other way around. His gaze dropped to Elena's wrist, where a silver bracelet hid the scar she always kept covered. Instinctively, she tugged her sleeve down to conceal it. Dominic saw the motion but did not ask. "You do not owe me your story," he said softly. "No one owes anyone their scars." They sat in silence again. But it was no longer a heavy silence. Elena's hand rested on the arm of the chair. Dominic's hand was there too, only a few centimeters away. Neither of them pulled back. Neither of them moved closer. Only two broken souls sitting beside each other in the night, finding a small warmth in a sea of ice. "Mom?" Lily's sleepy voice drifted in from the doorway. Elena turned to see her daughter standing there in shark pajamas, eyes half closed against the firelight. "I dreamed about the shark." She rubbed her eyes, then saw Dominic. No fear, no hesitation, only a curious tilt of her head. "Uncle Dominic? You cannot sleep either? Do you like sharks?" Dominic looked at Elena, then down at Lily. Something in those gray eyes softened in a way Elena had never seen. "I think sharks are the most wonderful creatures in the ocean." Lily's eyes lit up like fireworks. She ran over at once and climbed onto the chair beside him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Uncle Dominic, did you know a great white shark can swim 40 kilometers an hour?" Elena sat there listening to her daughter chatter about sharks to the most dangerous mafia king in New York, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt as if she was not running anymore. The call came in the morning, while Elena was in her private room preparing Dominic's vitamin dose, an unfamiliar number. But the moment she answered, "Mrs." Kowalski's trembling voice on the other end made her heart seem to stop. "Elena, sweetheart, a man came asking about you," the old woman whispered. Fear threaded through every word. "He came to your old apartment. Asked the neighbors. Asked me too. He knows you used to live there. He asked where you went." Elena gripped the edge of the table so hard she could feel the world tilt under her feet. "What did he look like?" The reply came like a nail driven in. "My girl, he was tall, black hair, a scar on his chin. The way he looked at me, like he could eat me alive. I told him I did not know anything, but I am so scared." In Elena's mind, the name rang out like a funeral bell. Marco. He had found a thread to pull. After 2 years of running, 2 years of living like a ghost, he was getting close. "Thank you, Mrs. Kowalski." Elena forced her voice into calm, even as her hands shook. "Do not open the door to strangers. If he comes back, call the police right away." She hung up. The instincts that had kept her alive these past 2 years began to scream. "Run! Run now! Grab Lily and run!" But run where? Marco would follow. He always followed. She had changed her name, changed her work, moved 5 times in 2 years, and he still found her. This time would be no different. What happened? Dominic's voice from the doorway made her flinch. He stood there with one shoulder against the frame, gray eyes reading her in an instant. "You look like you have seen a ghost." "Marco," Elena heard herself say, her voice raw. "He found my old apartment. He is asking around. He is going to find me." Dominic said nothing, his face barely shifting. He only pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and waited. "Enzo." His voice was steel when the other man picked up. "Marco D'Angelo, Russo's soldier. Send him a message. Make it clear. Do not kill him. I want him healthy enough to be afraid." He ended the call, looked at Elena, and gave a short nod as if he had just finished an ordinary meeting. "It is done." "What message?" Elena asked, though some part of her was not sure she wanted to know. Dominic only looked at her, saying nothing. That night, Elena could not sleep, turning restlessly beside Lily's soft, steady breathing, because she did not know what Dominic had done. But she knew it was not a polite letter. And the next morning, Enzo appeared in Dominic's office, while Elena was there to report on Dominic's condition. He nodded to her, then turned to Dominic with the flat calm of a man used to that kind of work. It is done, boss. Marco D'Angelo got the message. 3 broken fingers and the name Cavetti carved into his chest. He will not be typing anyone's name into a search bar for a while. Elena felt as if ice water had been thrown in her face. She turned to Dominic, not knowing whether she was furious or terrified or grateful. Maybe all at once. You did not need to do that, she said, her voice rising higher than she meant. That is torture. That is violence. Dominic signaled Enzo to leave, then faced her with a calm that was somehow worse than anger. You want him to keep looking for your daughter? Elena opened her mouth to answer, but no words came, because she saw Lily's wide, innocent eyes in her mind. She saw what Marco would do if he found them. She fell silent. Dominic stood and came toward her, but stopped at a distance that did not invade her space. I did not do it because I enjoy violence. His voice softened, almost gentle. I did it because in this world words mean nothing, only actions. You can tell Marco 1,000,000 times that you do not want to see him and he will not listen, but the scar on his chest will remind him every day that you belong under Cavetti protection. And if he has even a little brain, he will never come near you or Lily again. Elena stood there, not knowing what to say, because she had grown up in a world where violence was wrong, where you called the police when you were in danger, where justice came through the courts, but that world had abandoned her. The police had not believed her when she reported Marco's abuse. The court had granted Marco visitation rights even while she begged. The system had failed her at every step, and now a mafia boss was doing what the entire system could not do, protecting her, in the only way he knew. Uncle Dominic, Lily's voice burst in from the doorway, cutting through the heavy silence. She ran in, clutching the thick shark book Isabella had bought her last week. You promised you would read to me. Today there is a chapter about tiger sharks. Elena started to stop her, but Dominic had already sat down on the sofa and motioned for Lily to climb up. She hopped onto his lap as if it were the most natural place in the world, opened the book, and jabbed her finger at the page with the picture of a fierce tiger shark. Read it, Uncle. Elena stood there watching Dominic Cavetti, the silent king, the boss of one of the 5 most powerful mafia families in New York, read a shark book to her daughter in a low, serious voice as if he were delivering a financial report. The tiger shark, scientific name Galeocerdo cuvier, is one of the largest shark species. They can grow up to 5 meters long and weigh nearly 1 ton. Lily giggled and corrected him. You have to make your voice scarier. Sharks are scary. Dominic looked down at her, one corner of his mouth lifting. Then he dropped his voice lower, pretending to be terrifying. They can eat anything, including little girls who do not go to bed on time. Lily shrieked with delight. For the first time, Elena saw Dominic truly laugh. Not the cold, calculating smile, but something real that lit his gray eyes and softened the sharp lines of his face. Elena stood there watching, feeling something inside her begin to crack. The wall she had built over 2 years, the wall that kept her apart from every man, the wall that protected her from being hurt again, was showing its first fracture, and she did not know whether to fear it or be grateful. Dominic Cavetti's 37th birthday party turned the estate into a palace of light. More than 100 guests, all family members and allies from across New York, pouring in through a line of luxury cars stretching along the white cobblestone drive, crystal chandeliers spilling warm gold across the main hall, where banquet tables were dressed with deep red roses and white candles, soft jazz floating from a live band in the corner and blending with laughter and the bright clink of champagne glasses. Elena stood in her room staring down at the dress Isabella had chosen for her, her thoughts tangled and unsteady, because she did not belong in things like this. For 2 years she had trained herself to be invisible, to blend into crowds so no one saw her and no one remembered her, and now she was being asked to attend as a guest. Are you ready? Isabella appeared in the doorway, smiling warmly when she saw Elena in the deep red dress, simple but elegant, close enough to her body to reveal the curves Elena had spent 2 years hiding beneath a waitress uniform and loose, shapeless clothes. Her hair smoothed and brushed by Isabella to fall over her shoulders instead of being pinned up the way it was every day. A touch of lipstick, a touch of mascara. When Elena looked in the mirror, she did not recognize the woman looking back. You look beautiful. Isabella came to her and set a hand on her shoulder. Dominic will forget how to breathe when he sees you. Elena flushed, about to protest, but Isabella only laughed and gently nudged her toward the door. Lily is asleep. Someone is watching her. Go enjoy yourself. The main staircase felt endless as Elena descended step by step, sensing the eyes in the hall turning toward her, her instincts urging her to turn back and slip into the familiar safety of shadow. And then she saw Dominic, standing near the fireplace, talking with several men who looked important. When the click of her heels reached the last step, he turned and went utterly still. Elena saw those gray eyes widen just a fraction, saw him lose the sentence he had been in the middle of speaking, saw Enzo clear his throat twice as if to remind him to breathe. For that brief moment, Dominic's gaze did not leave her once, as if she were the only thing in a crowded room. "Niece!" Victor's voice shattered the moment as he appeared at Elena's side wearing his warmest false smile. "You look so beautiful tonight. Let me take you around and introduce you to everyone." Before Elena could refuse, Victor's hand settled on her back and guided her through the crowd, resting a little too long, a little too low for comfort. Elena had to fight the urge to shudder. "This is my nephew's personal doctor," Victor announced to each cluster of guests with an air of manufactured pride. "She is taking very good care of Dominic's health." For half an hour, Elena was pulled from one group to the next, forced to smile and nod at people she knew were criminals beneath the polished masks of successful business leaders, until she felt as if she could not breathe. And then someone caught her arm and drew her into a darker corner. Dante. His eyes bloodshot from alcohol, his breath heavy with it, yet his voice strangely clear. "Be careful with Uncle Victor," Dante whispered, his eyes flicking toward Victor, laughing with the guests. "He is not what he looks like. No one in this house is what they look like." Then he gave a jagged little laugh, released her, and staggered away as if he had said nothing at all, leaving Elena standing there unsure whether it had been a real warning or the babble of a drunk. When no one was watching, she slipped out onto the back balcony and took a deep breath of cool night air. Stars scattered overhead, the rose garden spreading beneath her. For the first time that night, she felt she could breathe. "You hate parties." Dominic's voice came from behind her. Elena turned to see him stepping onto the balcony with 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. Not a question. "I hate being looked at." Elena took the glass he offered and sipped a small mouthful. "Contradictory, isn't it? Living invisible for so long that you no longer know what to do when someone actually sees you." Dominic stood beside her, looking out over the garden, silent for a long time. "If you were not running, what kind of life would you want?" Elena startled at the question because no one had asked her that in 2 years. No one had cared what she wanted. "A small house," she heard herself say, surprised by her own honesty, "with a yard for Lily to play in. Maybe we could keep fish. Not sharks, but goldfish would do. Safety. Peace. Not checking over my shoulder every time I step outside. Not feeling fear every time there is a knock at the door." She looked at him with a half-joke that was only half a joke. "Too much to ask, isn't it?" Dominic looked at her, the gray of his eyes deep under the moonlight. "I can give you all of that." "At what price?" Elena asked carefully, because she had learned that nothing in this world was free. Dominic did not answer. Instead, he set his champagne on the railing, turned to her, and lifted her chin with a gentle hand. And then he kissed her, sudden, yet softer than she would have imagined from a man like him. His mouth warm and tender, not demanding, not taking, only asking a question he did not know how to put into words. In that kiss, Elena felt the desperation, the loneliness, the hunger of a man who had lived too long without love, and she did not push him away. She did not know what she wanted, but she knew she did not want the moment to end. The crack of gunfire tore through the night. Elena jerked back from the kiss, her heart careening. From the direction of the front gate came screaming and the thunder of running feet, chaos spilling into the air. Dominic changed in an instant from the man who had just kissed her into the Silent King, his eyes turning to ice. "Inside, now," he ordered, his voice steel. "Find Lily and stay with Isabella. Go. Someone has breached the estate." Chaos erupted in a single breath, gunfire cracking again and again from the direction of the main gate, glass shattering, guests screaming as they panicked and searched for a way out, the gunmen from outside pouring in through a side entrance. At least 20 of them in black, faces hidden behind masks, automatic weapons in their hands. Elena stood frozen on the balcony and watched the glittering mansion turn into a battlefield in seconds. Dominic changed right in front of her, and the change made her skin prickle. The man who had kissed her with a gentleness edged with desperation vanished. In his place stood the Silent King, gray eyes hard as steel, a voice that cut clean through the noise around them. "Enzo, get the guests down to the safe room," he ordered, already with his phone in hand. "Victor, hold the east gate. Do not let anyone through. Dante, stay put and do not do anything stupid." Then he turned to Elena, and for one brief moment she saw something different in his eyes. Not command, but real concern. Lily is in the room with Isabella. Go. Now. Do not stop for anything. Elena did not need to be told twice. She tore off the high heels and flung them aside and ran, barefoot on the cold stone floor, down the long, yawning corridor. Gunfire booming behind her like thunder. Closer. Closer. She cut the corner into the hall that led to the east wing where Lily's room and Isabella's were at the end. Only a few meters now. She could see the door to the safe room at the far end of the hallway, and then a dark figure stepped out of the shadows and blocked her path. Hello, sweetheart. That voice. Sweet on the surface and rotten underneath. The one Elena had tried to erase for 2 years. The blood in her veins turned to ice as she lifted her eyes and saw Marco D'Angelo standing there, the same as she remembered and yet different. A newer scar on his chin, 3 fingers wrapped in bandages, eyes more unhinged than ever. On his chest, she caught the faint outline of the name Cavetti beneath his shirt. Thought you could run. Marco laughed as he came toward her. Thought some mafia bastards could protect you. I have been waiting a long time for tonight. Russo gave me this chance. And your dear Uncle Victor opened the gate and let us in. It hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. Victor. The man poisoning Dominic was also the man opening the gates for the Russo attack. It had all been one scheme. And she was standing in the middle of it. You think you can leave me? Marco stepped closer, each word landing like a slap. You belong to me. He struck her before she could dodge. The blow so hard Elena went down to the floor, the taste of blood flooding her mouth, her ears ringing with pain. A familiar feeling. 2 years ago she would have stayed there curled tight, begging him to stop. But the Elena from 2 years ago was dead. Marco bent down, grabbed her hair and yanked her up. That was when she moved. The syringe in the pocket of her dress, the one she had hidden from the first day she entered this estate, because she knew she could never afford to forget that danger could come at any moment. She pulled it out and drove it straight into Marco's neck and pushed in the full dose of sedative she had prepared. Marco's eyes blew wide, his mouth opening but no sound coming. He staggered back, clawing at his throat where the needle still sat. Then he collapsed like a felled tree, eyes rolling white, his body jerking a few times before going still. Elena rose, her legs shaking but holding. She looked down at the man who had tormented her for 3 years, now unconscious at her feet. She did not feel fear anymore, only release. Fast footsteps pounded at the end of the corridor. Elena spun, ready to fight if she had to. But it was Enzo, gun in hand, his eyes sweeping the scene. He looked at Marco on the floor, then at Elena with the syringe still in her fingers. He gave a single nod of respect. Impressive, Enzo said briefly. Lily is in the safe room with Sister Isabella. Follow me. Elena ran after Enzo through the maze of hallways until they reached the reinforced room at the end of the east wing. The steel door swung open and Lily shot into Elena's arms like a small missile. Mom, I am scared. There are gunshots. I am here, sweetheart. Elena held her tight, tears spilling down her cheeks. I am here. I will not let anyone hurt you. Isabella stood beside them, her face composed but her eyes full of worry. She looked at Elena, saw the blood on her lip, and understood without asking. On the wall-mounted security camera screen, Elena could see the estate in full, Russo's gunmen being driven back as Dominic's people took control, and in the main hall she saw Dominic facing Victor, his uncle with his hands raised as if surrendering, his mouth moving in words Elena could not hear. Dominic opposite him with a gun in his hand and a face emptied of emotion. Then a shot rang out. Not to the head, not to the chest. Dominic fired into Victor's knee, and Victor's howl burst through the camera speakers. Elena watched Victor crumple to the floor, clutching his blood-soaked leg. She knew tonight was only the beginning of another kind of hell. Dawn rose over the Cavetti estate carrying ruin in its light, shattered window panes, bullet scars pocking the walls. Dried blood pooled across the marble floors that had once been pristine white. 7 Russo gunmen zipped into body bags lined along the corridor waiting to be handled the way the underworld handled its dead. 3 Cavetti men injured and being treated in private rooms. Marco D'Angelo cuffed and locked in a storage room still drifting in and out under the sedative, and Victor Cavetti, the uncle, the consigliere, the traitor, confined in a wine cellar remade into an interrogation room. Elena sat in a small monitoring room beside the cellar, her eyes fixed on the security feed. Even though Dominic had not wanted her there, had said plainly she did not need to see what he would have to do, but she needed to know, needed to understand who the man was that she had allowed to crack the wall around her heart. On the screen the cellar was dim, lit by a single bare bulb hanging overhead. Victor slumped on a wooden chair with his hands bound behind his back, his wounded leg wrapped in a rough bandage already seeping blood through the cloth. And Dominic sat across from him several meters away, silent as stone, not speaking, not asking, only sitting and watching. "How long are you going to stare at me?" Victor finally snapped, his voice weak, but still thick with contempt. "What do you want me to say? That I regret it?" "I regret nothing." Dominic stayed silent. Victor laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You are just like your father, Dominic. Patient, cold, cruel. He liked silence too, liked watching other people crack under the pressure of waiting." The silence stretched. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Elena watched Victor grow restless, his eyes darting, his tongue wetting his dry lips. Dominic's quiet pressing down on his chest like a 1,000-pound anvil. "All right!" Victor finally burst as if a dam had broken. "What do you want to hear? That I have been working with Vincent Russo for 2 years? Yes, I have. That I put thallium into your wine every day? Yes, I did that too. Perfect plan." He laughed like a madman. "You die slowly. Symptoms like exhaustion from overwork. Doctors never suspect a thing. Then I blame Russo, lead the family to strike back, and become the hero. The new dawn. Finally #1. Dominic still did not speak, only tilted his head slightly as if listening to a boring story. "You want to know why?" Victor screamed, his voice splintering like glass. "Because I hate you. I have hated you since the day you were born. You are your father all over again, the one who got everything while I got nothing." He bared his teeth, angry tears spilling down his cheeks. 40 years I lived in his shadow. Our father favored him. The family worshipped him. He got power, he got love, he got everything. And me? I was the cleaner, the consigliere, #2 forever. Victor laughed through tears and madness. "And you? You are even worse than he was. At least he had a heart that still beat. You are a machine. You do not know love. You do not know fear. You know nothing but power and control. You deserve to die." Dominic rose, turned his back, and started toward the door. That was when Victor threw his last blow. "You killed your father," he bellowed, his voice echoing off the cellar walls. "You think I do not know? I was there that night. I saw you walk out of his room with blood on your hands. You killed my brother, a nephew who killed his own father." On the screen, Elena saw Dominic stop, his back going rigid, his fist tightening hard. But he did not turn. He stood there for a long, endless moment, then walked out of the cellar and slammed the steel door behind him with a booming clang that echoed. Elena shut off the monitor and ran into the hall, finding Dominic braced against the wall, eyes squeezed shut, his chest rising and falling as if he had run a marathon. When he heard her steps, he opened his eyes. Those gray eyes empty as 2 bottomless pits. "You heard," he said, not a question. Elena did not lie. She nodded. Silence fell between them, heavy and airless. Then she spoke, her voice gentler than she expected. "Did you kill your father?" Dominic looked at her. In that instant, she did not see the silent king. She saw a 12-year-old boy watching his mother die. She saw pain crushed down for 24 years. "He ordered my mother killed," Dominic said, his voice rough. "That night I was 12. I heard him give the order to his men. Down the stairs. An accident. No one can know." He drew a deep, shaky breath. 16 years later, when I was strong enough, I confronted him. I asked why. He laughed and said my mother was weak, not worthy to be a Don's wife. He met Elena's eyes without flinching. I killed him that night, with my own hands, and I do not regret it. Silence. Elena stood facing a man who had just confessed to killing his own father. She should have been afraid. She should have run. But all she felt was the aching understanding of someone who knew what it was to be betrayed by the person who was supposed to protect you. "Do you condemn me?" Dominic asked, almost a whisper. For the first time she heard fear in it. Not fear that she would hate him, but fear that she would look at him and see only a monster. Elena stood facing Dominic in the dark hallway, his question still hanging between them like a sharpened blade. "Do you condemn me?" She looked into those gray eyes, waiting for a verdict. In that moment, she did not see a mafia boss. She saw a man who had carried the weight of a horrifying secret for 24 years. A man who had done the unthinkable to avenge his mother. And she understood. She understood in the only way people betrayed by their own families ever truly can. "I do not have the right to judge anyone," Elena heard herself say, slow, choosing each word with care, remembering everything as she spoke. The nights Marco came home drunk, his fists, Lily's crying in the corner. The times she went to the police precinct and met their skeptical eyes and their questions that made her feel like the one on trial. The system refusing to protect her and pushing her back toward her abuser because there was not enough proof. Then she went on, her voice roughening under the pressure of painful memory. I once let a patient die because I stayed silent. One night at Mount Sinai, there was a woman beaten nearly to death. Her husband was a doctor at the hospital. Everyone knew, but no one said anything, and neither did I. She died 3 days later, and I have lived with that guilt every day since. Elena drew in a deep breath that shook on the way out, and I was afraid to leave Marco for 3 years. 3 years of being hit, humiliated, kept captive in my own home, because I was afraid, because I thought I had nowhere to go, because some part of me believed I deserved it. She lifted her eyes to Dominic's. I am not a saint, Dominic. I do not have the right to condemn anyone. Dominic watched her as if this were the first time in his life someone had not stepped back after learning the truth about him. Not fear, not disgust, only the quiet recognition of two broken souls seeing each other in the dark. He did not speak, only lowered himself onto the oak steps. Elena sat down beside him, their shoulders nearly touching in the hallway, lit only by the faint spill of light from the window at the far end. Then, for the first time in her life, she told someone what she had hidden for 2 years. The night I ran from Marco, Lily was 3. Her whisper slid into the darkness. He came home drunk, furious about something at work. He beat me until I passed out. And when I woke up, I saw Lily trying to bandage the cut on my head with paper towels. A 3-year-old, her face wet with tears, telling me not to sleep, telling me I had to get up. Elena pushed up her sleeve and revealed the pale scar on her wrist she always hid. This scar was not something I did to myself. It was the time Marco taught me a lesson for daring to talk to a male coworker at the hospital. He used a broken wine bottle. She gave a thin laugh with no humor in it. I thought I was going to die that night, but I looked at Lily watching me with those terrified eyes, and I knew I could not die. Not for me, but because she would have no one. Dominic listened without interrupting, without reacting, only taking each word in as if it were something precious. When Elena stopped, he did not offer hollow comfort or meaningless lines like, "Everything will be fine." He only said one thing. "You were not weak," his voice low and sure. "You survived, with a 3-year-old in your arms. No money, nowhere to go, no one to help you. You ran and rebuilt a life from zero. That is the bravest thing I have ever seen." Elena felt tears slide down her cheeks before she even realized she was crying, because no one had ever spoken to her like that. No one. Small footsteps sounded on the stairs above, breaking the moment. They both turned to see Lily standing at the top of the staircase, sleepy-eyed, hair sticking up, clutching her teddy bear. She did not run to Elena the way she usually did. She looked straight at Dominic, and then she flew down the stairs like the wind and ran straight into his legs. "Papa, are you hurt? I heard so many gunshots. I was scared." Elena went rigid, her heart seeming to stop. "Papa." Lily had just called Dominic Papa. No one had taught her. No one had told her to say it. Her 5-year-old heart had chosen this man as a father all on its own. Dominic went still for a beat, too. For the first time, Elena saw something fracture in those cold, gray eyes. He knelt down to Lily's height and gathered her gently into his arms. "Papa is fine." His voice went rough. Elena would have sworn she saw wetness in his eyes. "Papa will always protect you. No one will hurt you or your mama. Papa promises." Lily wrapped her arms tight around his neck. In that moment, inside an estate scarred with bullet holes and dried blood, Elena saw a family, the strangest family in the world, built from broken pieces, but still a family. After Isabella came to take Lily back to bed, Dominic turned to Elena, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "I am not asking you to stay," he said slowly. "I am giving you a choice. After everything you have seen and heard, you have the right to leave. I will arrange a new life for you and Lily, safe, far from this world, no strings." Elena looked at him for a long time, thinking of 2 years spent running, of nights wide awake with fear, of a life lived looking over her shoulder. And then she thought of these past weeks, of the first time in her life she had felt protected, of the way Dominic looked at Lily, of the kiss on the balcony. She reached for his hand, their fingers threading together as naturally as if they belonged there. "I have been running my whole life," she said. "I want to stop." A week after the attack, the Cavetti estate was still under repair. Builders and painters coming and going every day, patching bullet scars in the walls, replacing shattered panes, erasing the evidence of that night of terror. But Elena knew there were wounds no paint and plaster could cover. Victor still locked below, waiting on a fate Dominic had not yet decided. Marco already handed over to Dominic's men to be dealt with, details Elena did not ask for and Dominic did not offer. Life in the estate slowly drifted back toward normal, or at least the closest thing to normal in the Cavetti world. That afternoon, Elena decided to take Lily out for the first time since the attack, because the little girl needed fresh air, needed to see a world beyond cold stone walls. Enzo drove them to a small town 15 minutes away and parked in front of the ice cream shop Isabella had recommended. "What flavor do you want, Lily?" Elena asked as they sat at a table by the window with warm, late sunlight spilling in. "Strawberry. And chocolate. And vanilla too," Lily cried, eyes bright as stars. Elena smiled, ordering 2 sundaes and a coffee for herself. She was watching Lily scoop ice cream with the unguarded happiness of a child when a man slid into the chair across from her, without permission and without greeting. Elena tensed at once, her hand instinctively reaching toward Lily. The man looked about 44, his face weathered with deep lines around his eyes, graying hair cut short and neat, a rumpled gray suit, as if it had been worn through too many sleepless nights. But what made Elena's skin crawl were his eyes. The eyes of someone who had seen too much darkness and was no longer surprised by anything. "Do not panic," the man said, his voice low and tired. "I am not here to arrest you." "Who are you?" Elena asked, her tone hard as she pulled Lily closer. "James Reeves." He produced a wallet and showed her the FBI badge inside. "Federal agent. I have been watching the Cavetti family for 10 years, and you, Elena Vasquez, showed up on my radar about 3 weeks ago." Elena's heart seemed to stop. The FBI. They had found her. Everything she had tried to build, the false identity, the new life, all of it about to collapse. She thought of Lily, of what her daughter's life would become if her mother was taken away, of everything she would lose. But before Elena could speak, Reeves lifted a hand. "I told you, I am not here to arrest you, and I do not want Dominic Cavetti either. He has problems, sure, but he is not my target." Elena blinked, thrown. "Then what do you want?" "Victor Cavetti," Reeves said, his voice turning colder. "And Vincent Russo. Those are the men I am hunting." He leaned forward and lowered his voice. "Do you know what Victor has been doing besides poisoning his nephew? For the past 5 years, he has helped Russo move more than 200 women from Eastern Europe into the United States. Trafficking, Miss Vasquez. Young girls lured with promises of good jobs and then sold into sexual slavery, under Dominic Cavetti's roof." Nausea rose in Elena's throat. She thought of Victor with his false warm smile, of the hand he had placed on her back at the birthday party, and now she could picture what that hand had done. "Does Dominic know?" she asked, her voice rough. "I do not think so." Reeves gave a small shrug. "Or he chooses not to know. In their world, sometimes not asking is how you survive. But that is not your problem. Your problem is what I want from you. What do you want? You are the only person who can convince Dominic to cooperate." Reeves looked her straight in the eye. "Give Victor to me, legally, with evidence of trafficking, and in return I erase your record. Elena Vasquez will no longer be hunted. No more running. No more false names. You can live under your real name and raise your daughter like an ordinary citizen." Elena fell silent and looked down at Lily, happily eating her ice cream and knowing nothing about the conversation that was deciding the future of both of them. Living under her real name. No more running. No more fear. Reeves stood, leaving a business card on the table. "You have 48 hours. After that, I will raid the estate with or without you. And then everything will become much more complicated for everyone." He walked away, leaving Elena with a mind in pieces and a little girl still laughing around a melting cone. That night, Elena told Dominic everything in the library. He sat listening in silence, his face unreadable. Yet she saw the knuckles of his hand clench on the chair arm until they blanched white. Victor was trafficking women. Dominic finally spoke, and his voice was colder than it had been when he learned Victor was poisoning him. 200 women, under my roof, in my family, and I did not know. Or I chose not to know, like that FBI agent said. The silence stretched. Elena not knowing what to say, only standing there and waiting. Then Dominic rose, went to his desk, picked up his phone, dialed the number from the business card Elena handed him, and waited. Agent Reeves. His voice was steel when the other man answered. "This is Dominic Cavetti. I will cooperate. On one condition." He looked at Elena, and she saw something soften in those cold gray eyes. "Elena Vasquez and her daughter are safe and free. A clean record. A new life. No one touches them, no matter what happens to me. Prussian blue had slowed the process, but it could not undo what 6 months of thallium had already destroyed inside Dominic's body. Elena realized that before anyone else, because she was the one watching him closest, the one counting every pill he swallowed, the one checking his eyes each morning for the first hint of jaundice. She could see him weakening, faster than she expected, faster than she feared. The symptoms grew sharper with every day that passed. Dominic's hands trembling when he lifted a glass of water until he had to use both hands just to keep from spilling it. Clumps of hair coming loose when he showered. Black strands Elena found on his bathroom floor that he tried to hide. And the brutal stomach pain that woke him in the middle of the night and folded him over in bed with cold sweat soaking through his shirt. Yet in front of the family, Dominic remained the silent king, sitting in meetings with the capos, making decisions, running his business as if nothing were happening. Because a boss was not allowed to be weak. In this world, one soft moment could let an enemy smell blood and the wolves would come tearing in. Enzo knew. Elena saw it in the way Dominic's right hand watched him each day, worry weighing down his eyes as he tried to keep his face professionally blank. Isabella knew, the older nun praying more than she ever had, lips moving with prayers Elena could not make out, her eyes red every morning as if she had cried through the night. They did not speak, but they knew, and that silence was heavier than any words. That night, Elena went down to the library at 2 a.m. because she could not sleep, pushed the door open, and found Dominic in the armchair by the fireplace, with his head bowed forward, one hand pressed to his abdomen, his face white as paper. He did not look up when she entered. She understood at once. He did not have the strength to stand. Elena did not speak. She only crossed the room and sank to the floor beside his chair, then gently let him rest his head on her shoulder. They stayed like that in the dark with only the crackle of the fire and Dominic's rough breathing filling the space. "I have done terrible things," Dominic whispered, his voice thin in a way she had never heard from him. "Maybe this is punishment. Maybe I deserve it." "No," Elena said, soft but firm, her hand stroking gently over the hair that was thinning beneath her fingers. "No one deserves to be killed by someone they trusted. Not even someone like you. Not even someone who has done terrible things. That is not justice. That is betrayal." Dominic said nothing, only closed his eyes and let himself sink into the warmth of her body. In that moment, he was no longer the silent king, no longer a powerful boss, only a tired, frightened man dying by degrees. The creak of a door made them both flinch. Elena turned and saw Lily standing in the doorway in her shark pajamas, teddy bear in one hand and a sheet of paper in the other. "Mom? Papa?" Lily patted in, wide eyes fixed on them with the anxious awareness of a child who can feel something is wrong even if she cannot name it. "I drew this for Papa. I think it will make Papa happy." She ran over and handed the paper to Dominic with the solemn seriousness of a 5-year-old offering her most precious treasure. Dominic took it with a trembling hand. Elena saw him go rigid when he looked at the drawing, 3 figures holding hands, one tall with black hair, one with brown hair in a dress, and one tiny with a smile that took up half her face. And above them, in a child's crooked letters, Lily had written a single word: family. "I drew us," Lily explained eagerly, pointing to each figure. "This is Papa, this is Mom, and this is me. We are a family, right? Sister Isabella said family is people who love each other. I love Papa and Mom, so we are a family." Dominic stared at the picture, and Elena saw something she never thought she would see. Tears, sliding down the cheeks of a man who had killed his own father without shedding a drop. A man who ruled an underworld empire with ice in his veins. The silent king was crying, not loudly, not with sobs, only quiet tears running down a gaunter face. The first time in 20 years. "Papa is crying." Lily panicked and climbed into Dominic's lap, her tiny hand touching his cheek. "Papa, does it hurt? I can blow on it. Mom blows on my boo-boos." Dominic gathered her close, burying his face in Lily's soft hair, his shoulders trembling faintly. "Papa is fine." His voice caught. "Papa is just happy. Happy because I have you. Because I have your mom. Because I have a family." Elena sat beside them, tears spilling down her own cheeks she did not bother to wipe away, her hand settling on Dominic's back as the 3 of them sat in the firelight. A strange family stitched together from broken pieces, but still a family. Elena's phone vibrated, cracking the moment. She looked at the screen and saw Sarah Chen's name, her stomach tightening with a bad instinct. She answered and stepped into the hallway so Lily would not worry. Sarah? Elena. I reviewed the latest lab results. Sarah's voice was heavy as stone. Prussian blue is only slowing it down. It cannot heal the damage that is already there. Prussian blue isn't enough anymore. The thallium has destroyed his marrow's ability to regenerate. But there is a new protocol, Elena. We don't need a full transplant. We need hematopoietic stem cell infusion. If we can introduce healthy, potent stem cells into his system, they can jumpstart his own marrow recovery. And pediatric stem cells, they are incredibly powerful. Even a small sample could be enough to save a grown man. It's his only chance. 6 weeks. Elena had 6 weeks to find a way to save Dominic. She threw herself into the work like someone out of her mind, every day drawing blood from each member of the family and sending it out for HLA testing under the cover of routine health checks. Dante, not compatible. Isabella, also not. A completely different blood type. Distant cousins Enzo managed to track down. None of them a match. The national bone marrow transplant waitlist required at least 8 months, and Dominic had only 6 weeks. She reached out to private hospitals, international donor organizations, even unofficial channels that Dominic's world never lacked. But his blood type and HLA profile were too rare, an unlucky genetic combination that made finding a compatible donor almost impossible. Each night, Elena sat in her workroom surrounded by medical files and lab results, eyes red from sleeplessness and quiet crying. Hundreds of records, hundreds of names, and not one of them fit, until, on a third sleepless night in a row, with her hands trembling from coffee and desperation as she turned page after page, her gaze caught on a single sheet. Lily's medical file. The blood work Elena had ordered when they first arrived at the estate to monitor her daughter's asthma. A report she had never studied closely because there had never been a reason. But now, as her eyes landed on the line listing blood type and HLA markers, her heart seemed to stop. Lily had the same rare blood type as Dominic, and 6 of 6 HLA markers matched perfectly. Because her cells were young and potent, a simple aspiration procedure taking just a small amount of marrow from her hip could provide enough stem cells to rebuild Dominic's immune system. Her own daughter was the key. Elena sat there, staring at the paper in her hand, feeling as if the world were collapsing around her. Lily was 5 years old. 5 years old. How could she let her child endure a painful medical procedure for a mafia boss? How could she place Lily in any risk at all, even the smallest risk? And yet, how could she watch Dominic die when she had a way to save him? How could she ever explain to Lily that Papa had died because her mother would not let her help? For the next 3 nights, Elena could not sleep, lying in the dark and staring at the ceiling while the conflict tore her apart from the inside. Because she was a mother, and her duty was to protect her daughter, not put her in harm's way. But she was also a woman who had let the walls around her heart fall for Dominic. A woman who had found family inside the house of an enemy. At last, she went to Isabella, finding the older nun seated in the small chapel at the edge of the garden when Elena stepped in with eyes swollen red and the lab results clutched in her hand. Elena told her everything, the matching blood type, the impossible decision, the fear and guilt grinding her down. Isabella listened without interrupting. Then, when Elena finally stopped, she took Elena's hand in her own. Old but warm. "Ask Lily," she said gently. "Your child has the right to know, and the right to choose. Children understand more than adults think, and Lily loves Dominic. Let her make her own decision." "But she is only 5 years old," Elena whispered. Isabella gave her a sad smile. "That is exactly why she will understand. We adults make everything complicated. Children are much simpler. For them, love and protection are obvious. They do not need to think their way into it." That afternoon, Elena brought Lily to the rose garden, where mother and daughter often sat to read together. Lily happily chasing butterflies and laughing, unaware of the conversation about to change her life. "Lily, sweetheart, come sit with Mommy for a minute," Elena said, as she sat on the stone bench and patted the empty space beside her. "Mommy wants to talk to you about something important." Lily ran over, climbed up, and looked at her with the bright curiosity of a child. "What is it, Mommy?" "I am good. Did I do something wrong?" "No, my love." Elena breathed in deeply, searching for the right words. "I want to talk to you about Papa. Papa is very sick, very sick." Lily went still, her little face turning serious. "Sick like my asthma?" "Mommy, worse, sweetheart." Elena took her daughter's hand and felt that small, warm palm inside her own. "And there is a way that might help Papa. You have special cells in your body that are like Papa's. The doctors can take a little from you and give it to Papa, and it might make him better. Take it from inside me? Lily tilted her head. Elena nodded. Just a tiny bit. From your hip bone. It's like a magic potion for Papa. The doctors will give you a special medicine to make you sleep, and when you wake up, you'll just have a little band-aid on your back. It won't take long at all, Elena said, fighting to keep her voice calm while her heart broke. But you are allowed to say no. This is your body and you get to decide. Mommy will not be angry if you do not want to. Lily stayed quiet for a long moment, her 5-year-old face creasing with a seriousness that looked almost grown. Then she lifted her eyes to Elena's. Papa will die if I do not help Mommy? Elena nodded through a tight throat, hardly trusting her own voice. Maybe, my love. Lily studied her for a long time, then nodded once, firm and sure. I will help. Lily, Elena began, but Lily squeezed her hand. Papa makes you laugh, Lily said, her small voice clear and steady. You did not laugh much before Papa. I see you laugh more now. I want you to keep laughing forever. She smiled, a child's angel smile. And also Papa promised that when I am big I can name a boat. I want to name it Great White. Papa cannot die before I get my boat. Elena pulled her daughter into her arms and cried as if a dam had burst. Crying from gratitude, from pain, from pride, from a million feelings she had no words for. You are braver than every grown-up I know, she whispered into Lily's soft hair. You are the best thing in my life. Lily patted her mother's back the way Elena always patted hers when Lily cried. Do not cry, Mommy, Lily said, sweet and warm. Family protects each other. You taught me that. 2 fronts opened at the same time. Elena felt as if she were being torn in half between them. On one side, her daughter, a brave 5-year-old being brought to Mount Sinai to prepare for the procedure that could save the life of the man Elena loved. And on the other side, the final war with the Russo family, a war that would decide the fate of all of them. Sarah Chen met them at the hospital entrance herself, her face serious but her eyes warm when she looked at Lily, because Elena had called her and explained everything, had begged her to personally supervise the procedure. And Sarah was the only doctor Elena trusted with her child's life. Hello, Lily. Sarah knelt to her level, her voice gentle the way it was with pediatric patients every day. I am your mom's friend. I'm going to take care of you, okay? Do you know about sharks? Lily asked immediately. Sarah laughed. I know sharks can smell a single drop of blood from almost half a kilometer away. Lily's eyes lit up. Elena let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Her little girl would be okay. She had to be. Lily was taken for a full workup, while Elena waited outside with her hands clenched together until her knuckles went white. Heart, lungs, blood, every number checked with care. 2 hours later, Sarah came out holding the results and a small smile. Lily is completely healthy and cleared, Sarah said, resting a hand on Elena's shoulder. The stem cell harvest is scheduled for tomorrow morning. It's a standard aspiration procedure, Elena, not major surgery. It carries very low risk, and because we only need a small amount, she will be up and asking for ice cream by the afternoon. Elena nodded, barely trusting her own voice, hugging Sarah and whispering thanks she did not have the strength to speak aloud. Meanwhile, on the second front, Enzo was coordinating with Agent Reeves to prepare the raid on Russo's stronghold, because under Dominic's pressure, Victor had confessed everything. Warehouse locations, buyer lists, shipping schedules, everything needed to tear the trafficking pipeline out by the roots. And Dominic, even lying in a hospital bed with his body weakening by the day, refused to lie still, commanding through his phone, his voice thin but still sharp, giving orders and directing the operation as if he were in a boardroom instead of a sick room, because the Silent King never rested, not even while dying. But there was one variable they had not accounted for. Detective Frank Morrison, a corrupt cop in Russo's pocket for 10 years, had learned of the raid plan and was preparing an escape route for Victor before the FBI could transport him. That information reached Dominic the night before the surgery through a call from Enzo. Elena sat in the hospital room listening while Dominic spoke into the phone, catching a flicker of worry on his gaunt face before it disappeared behind the familiar mask of cold control. Handle Morrison, Dominic said, his tone flat as weather. I do not care how. Do not let Victor get out. Then he ended the call, and silence settled over the room. Elena watched him from the chair beside the bed and saw the tiredness in his gray eyes. Not tiredness from illness, but the tiredness of a man who had been fighting his whole life. Dominic reached into the bedside drawer, pulled out a sheet of paper, and handed it to her. This account, he said, his voice low and grave. If I do not make it through tomorrow, it is enough for you and Lily to live for the rest of your lives. Buy a small house with a yard. Keep goldfish. Live the quiet life you used to dream about. Elena looked at the paper in her hand, at the account numbers and the amount she knew would mean she never had to work again. Then she tore it in half, then into quarters, then into pieces, and let the scraps flutter to the floor. Dominic stared at her, his eyes widening with shock. Elena, I do not want your money. She met his gaze, her voice trembling but unbreakable. I want you alive. I want you to see Lily name that damn boat. I want you there when she starts school, when she grows up, when she becomes the shark researcher she dreams of being. I want you, not the money. Dominic looked at her for a long moment, then took her hand and pulled her down onto the bed, kissing her slowly, deeply, as if he were trying to memorize the taste of her in case this was the last time. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, he whispered when they parted, his forehead resting against hers. Do you know that? You came and dumped ice water in my lap, saved my life, and then you gave me a family. I do not deserve you. You do, Elena whispered back through tears. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to live. The next morning, Elena stood in the hospital corridor and watched Lily being taken into the operating room on the left, watched Dominic being wheeled into the operating room on the right. Both of them looked back at her before the doors closed, Lily lifting her hand in a wave with that angel smile, Dominic giving a small nod that somehow held an entire world inside it, and then both doors swung shut at once, leaving Elena alone in a corridor white with disinfectant and fear. She closed her eyes, pressed her hands together, and prayed, for the first time in 10 years, not because she believed in God, but because she did not know any other way to survive the hours ahead. The surgical waiting room was blindingly white and as cold as a morgue. Elena could not stop pacing from one end of it to the other, her footsteps tapping a steady rhythm on the tile like the hand of a clock counting down, the 5th cup of coffee in her hand long gone cold, bitter as poison. Yet she kept drinking because she needed something, anything, to hold on to. 2 of Dominic's guards posted outside the door, and Isabella sat in the corner praying without pause, lips moving with words Elena could not make out. The operating room doors opened, and Sarah Chen stepped out still in her blue scrubs. Elena rushed to her at once, heart pounding wild. Lily is doing perfectly. We extracted the stem cells without any complications, just a small puncture wound on her hip. We are processing the cells now for infusion into Dominic. It's going exactly as planned. Everything is going as planned. Elena's breath left her in a rush, her legs threatening to buckle with relief. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Sarah squeezed her hand and went back inside. Elena sank into a chair, and for the first time in hours allowed herself to breathe. She did not know that a few kilometers away, another battle was unfolding. Vincent Russo's headquarters, in an old warehouse on the Brooklyn waterfront, now surrounded by a combined force of FBI agents and Cavetti men, Enzo leading from the east, while Agent Reeves commanded from the west. The raid hitting like lightning, gunfire snapping for a few minutes before cutting off. When the smoke cleared, Vincent Russo lay face down on the floor with cuffs on his wrists. Around him, dozens of soldiers arrested and evidence of the trafficking operation piled high. A cross-border trafficking ring collapsing in a single night. Yet no one knew Detective Morrison had moved first before he was taken, slipping Victor out of custody at the Cavetti estate while everyone's attention was on the raid. And now Victor Cavetti was on his way to Mount Sinai with one purpose: to kill Dominic while he was at his weakest. Elena sat in the waiting room with her eyes closed from exhaustion when the door burst open. She looked up thinking Sarah had returned with news. But it was not Sarah. Victor Cavetti stood in the doorway with his suit rumpled and his face smeared with bruises and dried blood, a gun in his hand leveled straight at her. 2 of Dominic's guards lay motionless in the hallway beyond him, with blood spreading across the white tile. Elena sprang to her feet, her heart seeming to stop. Isabella rose too, rosary clenched in her fist. Niece, Victor smiled, the smile of a man with nothing left to lose, burned down to madness and ash. What a shame you had to be here. Step aside. This does not involve you. Elena looked at Dominic's operating room doors only a few meters away. The man she loved on that table inside, with his chest opened and no way to defend himself. And down the hall, her daughter lay in recovery, unaware of the hell in the corridor. Elena stepped toward the operating room door. What are you doing? Victor roared, lifting the gun higher. Elena stopped with her back to the door and turned to face him, planting herself in front of it, arms spread, offering her own body as a shield. If you want to kill him, you will have to go through me. Her voice shook, but her feet did not move. Victor laughed, the sound echoing wild through the empty hall. "Who are you to stand in my way? You are a waitress. You think you are a hero? You think you can stop me? I am a woman whose daughter gave her stem cells to save the man you want to kill," Elena said, and her voice went colder and steadier. "My 5-year-old is braver than you. She gave something of herself to save Dominic's life. You think I will let you destroy that? You think I will let my daughter's sacrifice be for nothing?" Victor raised the gun and aimed it straight at her chest. "I do not want to kill you, but if you do not move, I will not move," Elena said, eyes locked on the barrel. "Kill me then, but you will have to look me in the eyes when you do it." Victor bared his teeth, finger tightening on the trigger. Elena closed her eyes and thought of Lily, thought of Dominic, thought of the family she had found in the ashes of her life. If she had to die to protect them, she would. The shot rang out, but Elena felt no pain. When she opened her eyes, Victor was falling to the floor, a bullet through his head, his eyes still wide open, surprise frozen on his face. Behind him, Enzo stood in the stairwell doorway with a smoking gun in his hand, lowering it as he stepped over Victor's body as if it were only furniture in the way. "Should have killed him a long time ago," Enzo said, his voice flat. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Send the cleaners to Mount Sinai, and bring the medical examiner. There is trash to take out." Elena stood there trembling, unsure whether to sit or faint, staring at Victor's body and the blood spreading beneath him, feeling nothing but relief. It is over. Finally over. The operating room doors opened, and Sarah Chen stepped out, exhaustion on her face but a bright smile breaking through. She walked through the chaos as if she were accustomed to seeing bodies in a hospital, came straight to Elena. "Both surgeries were successful," Sarah said, taking Elena's hand. "Lily is in recovery and completely stable. She is asking for ice cream. And Dominic, his body is responding well to the new marrow. He will need time to recover, but he will live." Elena collapsed into the chair. For the first time in days she cried. Not from fear, not from pain, but from relief, from gratitude, because her family was still whole. Lily woke up nearly 2 hours before Dominic did. When her eyes opened in the recovery room, the first thing she asked was not where it hurt or what had happened, but one single question. "Is Papa alive yet, Mom?" Elena sat beside her daughter's bed, holding that tiny hand with the IV still taped to the back of it, crying and smiling at the same time, tears sliding down her cheeks while her mouth broke into the brightest smile she had ever worn. "Papa is going to be okay, my love," she whispered, kissing Lily's forehead. "Because of you. You saved Papa." Lily smiled, her eyes still heavy with anesthesia. "So I get ice cream now, right?" "The doctor promised I would get ice cream if I was good." Elena laughed and pulled her into a careful hug so she would not bump the sore places. "You can have as much ice cream as you want, even a whole ice cream shop if you want." Dominic woke a few hours later, weak and wrung out, but alive. Elena stayed beside him from the first moment, sitting in the chair next to his ICU bed, working on her laptop when he slept, and holding his hand when he was awake, not leaving, not out of duty, but because she did not want to, because for the first time in her life she had a place she wanted to stay. The next 3 months passed like a dream Elena did not dare believe was real. News from the outside arriving in fragments like the final pieces of a picture slowly sliding into place. Vincent Russo convicted in federal court on cross-border trafficking, money laundering, and a long list of other charges the prosecutors had been building for 10 years. 3 life sentences with no possibility of parole. He would die in prison, and no one would mourn him. Marco D'Angelo extradited back to New York to face charges of assault, threats, and complicity in Russo's trafficking operation. 15 years in prison. By the time he ever walked out, Lily would be grown and would not have to fear him anymore. Elena read the sentencing in the paper and felt nothing but relief. The ghost was gone. Victor Cavetti declared dead at the hospital from the gunshot wound. No one in the family wore black for him. No funeral, no eulogies. He was erased from their history as if he had never existed. And Dante Cavetti, most surprising of all, entered rehab voluntarily after watching everything collapse, sending Dominic a letter apologizing for his weakness and promising he would try to become better. Dominic did not answer, but he did not tear the letter up either. And then came the decision no one expected. In a meeting with the remaining capos, Dominic announced he was stepping down as boss of the Cavetti family and transferring full power to Enzo Marchetti. The room fell into a deadly silence. A few men wanted to object, but no one dared. Enzo had proven loyalty in blood, with the bullet that ended Victor's life, with years spent at Dominic's back without complaint, and the silent king, even as he gave up the throne, remained the most dangerous man in the room. Dominic kept the legitimate assets, the properties, restaurants, and investments he had built over the years to wash dirty money into clean, and now they truly were clean. He cut ties with the underworld completely. No one dared stop him. A week later, Elena got a call from Agent Reeves. Her record had been wiped clean. Elena Vasquez was no longer running, no longer wanted, no longer forced to live under a false name. For the first time in 2 years, she could live under her real name and be herself. That afternoon, Elena found Dominic standing at the hospital window looking out over New York City spread beneath him, strong enough to be on his feet again, though still thin and tired, his hair beginning to grow back, short dark stubble like new grass after rain. Elena stepped beside him and stood in silence for a long moment, watching the city with him. "Do you regret it?" Dominic asked abruptly, his voice low and weary. "Saving a monster?" Elena turned to him and met those gray eyes waiting for judgment, waiting for her to say he did not deserve it, that she had been wrong to spill that glass of wine, that she should have let him die. She answered softly but with iron underneath. "I did not save a monster. I saved a man. The monster is what this world turned you into, the armor you had to wear to survive, but it is not who you really are." She took his hand and threaded her fingers through his. "Who you really are," she went on, "is the man who reads shark books to my daughter every night, the man who cried over a 5-year-old's family drawing, the man who was willing to give up his empire to protect the people he loves. That is the man I saved, and I do not regret it for a single second." Dominic looked at her, and for the first time since the day she met him, she saw those gray eyes without their coldness. Warm now, gentle, filled with a feeling she thought he had forgotten how to hold. Hope. 6 months later, life had changed completely in a way Elena never would have dared to dream. The new penthouse on the Upper East Side flooded with light from broad windows overlooking Central Park. Nothing like the cold Long Island estate. No stark white marble like a tomb. No dead-eyed men posted on every corner. Instead, warm cream-colored walls, light wood furniture, and everywhere the signs of a real family living and loving inside it. Up on the roof, Lily had claimed one corner as her own little garden, growing tomatoes, basil, and a sunflower bush she stubbornly called a shark sunflower for no reason other than the fact that she loved sharks. Every afternoon, Dominic sat beside her with the watering can, listening as she explained photosynthesis with the solemn seriousness of a tiny scientist. Elena had gone back to nursing, but not in a regular hospital or clinic. She opened a free clinic for women living with domestic abuse in a renovated old building in Brooklyn. Dominic put up the initial capital, and that was the full extent of his financial involvement. Everything else, from the design to the day-to-day operations, from hiring staff to building the support programs, was Elena's work. She named it Safe Harbor because that was what she wished she had had when she was still running from Marco. A place to go, a place to heal, a place where no one judged. Dominic worked from home, managing his legitimate investments by laptop and phone. He also created a new charity fund, the Maria Foundation, focused on supporting children who suffer domestic abuse. He did not talk much about it, did not court the press, did not hold press conferences. He simply signed checks, approved programs, and sometimes visited the children's shelters the foundation supported in person. Elena understood that was how he atoned, not to the world, but to the 12-year-old boy inside him who had never been protected. Lily attended a normal public elementary school nearby, her asthma completely controlled with the best medicine and the clean air of the penthouse. She told her classmates that her papa worked with sharks, an explanation no one really understood, but everyone nodded at because Lily said it with such pride no one dared question it. That Sunday afternoon, Elena came home after a morning shift at the clinic and found the kitchen turned into a battlefield, flour dusting the counters, the floor, and especially the faces of both Dominic and Lily. The two of them kneading dough together to make pasta from a recipe Dominic said had belonged to his grandmother Maria. "Mom, look!" Lily shouted when she saw Elena, holding up a long crooked noodle. "I made it myself," Papa said. "Grandma Maria made noodles like this too. It is beautiful, my love." Elena laughed, leaning in the kitchen doorway and not rushing to clean the mess, because she wanted to stand there a moment longer and watch the man she loved and her tiny daughter making something beautiful out of flour and water. Dominic looked up at her, his face streaked with flour, his hair grown back thick. The smile on his mouth made her heart jump. This was not the Silent King anymore. This was just a man teaching a little girl how to make pasta. The doorbell rang and Isabella walked in carrying a box of homemade cannoli. She visited every week and every time she came, she brought food, as if she were afraid they might starve. She stopped in the kitchen doorway, took in the sight, and tears began to roll down her wrinkled cheeks. "Maria would be proud of you, Dominic," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You have finally found peace. You finally have a family." Dominic set the dough down and went to her, wrapping her in an embrace that was tight and long. The embrace of a 12-year-old boy who lost his mother and had been trapped inside a man's body for 25 years, finally set free. That night after the homemade pasta and Isabella's cannoli, Elena put Lily to bed. Lily lay beneath her shark blanket with her teddy bear hugged close and her eyes drifting shut with sleep. "Mom?" Lily asked suddenly when Elena started to rise. "Can I ask something?" "What is it, sweetheart? Is Papa my real dad?" Elena looked up to see Dominic standing in the doorway, his eyes gentle as he watched the two of them, not speaking, only waiting for her answer. "A real dad is the one who chooses to love you every day, my love." Elena stroked her daughter's hair, her voice soft as a lullaby. "A real dad does not have to be the one who made you. A real dad is the one who stays when you are scared, reads you books, teaches you pasta, and protects you from all the ugly things in the world." Lily thought for a moment, her child's serious face weighing something important. Then she nodded, satisfied. "Then Papa is my real dad," she declared with certainty, "because Papa chose me and Mom. Papa loves me, and I love Papa." From the doorway, Elena saw Dominic turn his face away, but not fast enough to hide the single tear that slipped down his cheek. 1 year later, Elena stood in the penthouse bathroom staring at the 2 red lines on the pregnancy test, and the world around her seemed to stop turning. She ran the test 3 times with 3 different sticks, and all 3 gave her the same answer. She was pregnant, in the middle of a life that had only just begun to feel steady, in the middle of a happiness she had never dared to hope for. A small new life was growing inside her. Elena did not know what to feel. She sat down on the edge of the bathtub with the test still in her hand and cried, not from sadness, not from fear, but from too many emotions arriving at once with no words big enough to hold them. Dominic found her there 10 minutes later, her eyes red, the pregnancy test still in her fingers. He looked at her, looked at the test. Elena watched the color drain from his face. "Elena?" He dropped to his knees in front of her, his voice rough. "Are you okay? Is this good news, or—" "I am pregnant," she whispered, handing him the test. "We are going to have a baby." Dominic stared at the 2 red lines for a long time. His reaction was not what Elena expected. He did not smile. He did not pull her into his arms. Instead, he shot to his feet and back toward the door, his face white as if he had just seen a ghost. "I cannot," he said, his voice shaking in a way she had never heard from the Silent King. "I do not know how to be a father. Look at my father and you will see. Look at what I have been and you will see. I am a killer, Elena. I have shot people, tortured people, ordered people killed. How can I raise a child? How can I not turn it into something like me?" Elena stood and stepped in front of him, taking his trembling hands in hers. "You have been Lily's father for more than a year already," she said, gentle but unmovable. "She thinks you are the best man in the world. After sharks, of course." Dominic gave a small, brief laugh that cracked some of the tension, but his eyes were still full of worry as he looked at her. "But Lily is not my blood. If I fail her, that is a sin I could never live with. But this baby, my blood, carrying my genes, if I turn it into—" "You are not your father," Elena cut in, tightening her grip on his hands. "You are not Victor. You are not any of them. You are the man who lets a 5-year-old name a boat, the man who reads shark books every night, who teaches pasta on Sundays, who cried over a family drawing. That man will be a good father, not because he is perfect, but because he will try, every single day." Dominic looked at her and Elena watched the fear in his eyes begin to loosen and drain away, leaving something else behind. Hope, and maybe even a small spark of excitement he did not dare admit. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Dominic led Elena up to the roof. She stepped out and went still at the sight. A small table set in the middle of Lily's garden, candles flickering everywhere, deep red roses in a glass vase, and a bottle of wine waiting on the table. Elena recognized the label immediately, and her breath caught. Barolo 2015. The same kind as the bottle on their first night in the obsidian room. The one she had spilled to save his life. Dominic poured the wine into 2 crystal glasses and handed one to her. Elena lifted it into the candlelight and studied the deep ruby color, raised it to her nose and breathed in. Tannin, oak, ripe fruit, no metallic bite, no faint violet shimmer. She took a small sip, and let it spread across her tongue, tasting every note. Then she whispered, her voice thick, "Safe." That was their ritual, their toast, their promise, that they were safe now, that they had survived, that they had found each other. Dominic set his glass down and went down on one knee in front of her. Elena felt her heart stop when she saw him pull out a small black velvet box and open it to reveal the ring inside. Simple and elegant, a small diamond set in platinum. Not loud, not flashy, only beautiful in the truest way. "Marry me," Dominic said, his voice rough and trembling. For the first time she saw him not hiding anything. "Not because I almost died and you saved me. Not because you are carrying my child, but because I want to live. With you, with Lily, with this baby, with everything you have given me, with the family I never thought I deserved." Elena cried and smiled at the same time, tears sliding down her cheeks as the brightest smile of her life bloomed on her mouth. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Dominic, yes." The wedding took place 1 month later, small and warm, only the closest people there. Isabella officiated in the little chapel she loved, her voice trembling as she read the blessing. Enzo stood as best man, stiff in his suit but with wet eyes when he watched Dominic slide the ring onto Elena's finger. Sarah Chen and Mrs. Kowalski sat in the front row, 2 women from 2 different worlds who had both helped save this small family. And Lily, as flower girl in a white dress and a basket decorated with sharks at her special request, scattered petals down the aisle with a seriousness as if this were the most important mission of her life. In his speech, Dominic stood before everyone with his hand locked around Elena's. "I lived my whole life in the dark," he said, his voice low and steady. "I thought that was my fate, what I deserved. Then one night a waitress dumped ice into my lap and saved my life." He looked at Elena, and she saw an entire world in those gray eyes. Turns out guardian angels do not have wings. They have a serving tray and a 5-year-old daughter obsessed with sharks. Everyone laughed, and Lily shouted from the front row, "That is me!" Elena stepped forward and kissed him in front of everyone without waiting for Isabella to pronounce anything. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered against his mouth. Dominic whispered back, his voice like a promise and a prayer. "Thank you for choosing not to walk away." 2 years later, life had carried them to a place Elena never would have dared to dream of. The suburban house in Connecticut was not a lavish estate like Long Island, just an ordinary 2-story home with a wide yard overflowing with flowers, a white fence circling it, and a small dock leading out to the clear blue lake behind the property. It was the most peaceful place Elena had ever known, a place where she could wake each morning without looking over her shoulder, without fearing a knock at the door, without bracing herself to run. Lily was 8 now, taller, quicker, and still as obsessed with sharks as ever. Announcing she would become a marine biologist when she grew up, and no one doubted her. Her room covered in shark posters, her bookshelf stacked with ocean books, and every night before sleep she still demanded Dominic read her about a new species of shark. Matteo, their 1-year-old son, had been named for Dominic's grandfather, the only man in the Cavetti family who had ever treated him kindly when he was small. The boy had his father's gray eyes and his mother's bright smile. Lily loved her little brother like the greatest treasure in her life, appointing herself Matteo's official protector and telling him about sharks every day, even though he did not understand a single word. Their daily life was so simple, Elena sometimes had to pinch herself to make sure she was not dreaming. She worked at Safe Harbor 3 days a week and spent the rest at home with Matteo. The clinic had grown, and now had 2 doctors and a volunteer team, helping more than 300 women find safe shelter and start over, while Dominic worked remotely managing his investments and the Maria Foundation through his laptop, taking Lily to school every morning and cooking dinner for the family every night. The silent king, now a man wearing an apron, making pasta, and being bossed around by his daughter. That afternoon they threw an 8th birthday party for Lily. After a small celebration with a shark-shaped cake and guests that included Isabella, Sarah Chen, Mrs. Kowalski, and a few of Lily's classmates, Dominic led her out to the dock. Elena followed, carrying Matteo. She saw her daughter's eyes go wide when she saw the gift. A small boat waiting at the pier, painted a silver white, just big enough for a family to glide across the lake together. And on the stern, in deep blue letters, was the name Lily had chosen 3 years earlier, Great White. "Papa!" Lily shrieked, throwing herself into Dominic's arms and clinging to his neck. "Papa remembered. Papa kept his promise. Papa always keeps his promises to you." Dominic kissed the top of her head and held her tight, especially promises about sharks. That night, after Lily and Matteo were asleep, Dominic and Elena sat on the porch looking out at the garden washed in moonlight, crickets singing, jasmine drifting on the breeze, and peace settling over them like a warm blanket. "Do you ever regret it?" Dominic asked suddenly, his voice low and thoughtful. "Everything you had to go through because of me?" Elena looked at him, and then out at the garden as memory rose like a slow-moving film. That night in the obsidian room, the poisoned wine, the split-second decision, and everything that followed: fear, violence, blood, and tears. Almost losing Lily, almost losing Dominic. And now this house, this family, this life. "I was invisible my whole life," Elena said slowly. Each word weighed as if she could feel its heft. "With a sick mother, with an addicted father, with Marco, with the world. I learned how to become a ghost because it was the only way to survive. But you were the first person who truly saw me. Not my surface, not the waitress or the abused woman. You saw me." Dominic took her hand and laced his fingers through hers the way they had done 1,000 times. "And you were the first person who saw I was not a monster," he said softly. "You saw me, and you did not run." They sat in silence then, needing nothing more than each other's presence, until Lily's voice rang from inside the house. "Mom? Papa? Matteo is awake, and I want ice cream." Dominic laughed and stood. "I will go." He bent to kiss Elena's forehead. "You sit here and rest." But Lily was faster, darting out onto the porch carrying her baby brother who was babbling nonsense. She did not wait for Dominic. She dragged him straight into the kitchen, her bright voice issuing orders about what kind of ice cream she wanted. Elena stayed behind alone and looked out at the garden under silver moonlight, remembering what she once thought about herself in the obsidian room on that first night when she was still a ghost among powerful men. Invisibility was a superpower. She had believed it. She had survived by it. But now she knew a different truth. Invisibility helped her survive, but being seen by the right person was the miracle. Lily's laughter rang out from the kitchen, clear as bells, mixing with Dominic's warm, low voice and Matteo's babbling as he tried to form his first real word. Elena smiled, rose, and walked into the warm light of the house. She was not a ghost anymore. She did not have to be invisible to be safe. She had found where she belonged. She was home. The story of the waitress and the mafia boss ends here, but the lessons it leaves behind remain. Sometimes the bravest decision is not running but stopping. Sometimes the people who seem like monsters are carrying broken hearts that need healing. And sometimes love does not come from perfection, but from seeing each other through the scars and still choosing to stay. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the most compelling stories each day. And do not forget to like and share this video with the people you love, because someone you care about might need the reminder that they deserve to be loved and they deserve to be seen. How did this story make you feel? Was there a moment that touched your heart the most? Leave a comment below and share what you feel from the deepest part of your heart. We cannot wait to read every line you share. Wishing all of you watching this video strong health, joyful days, and a life filled with love. And remember, you do not have to be invisible to be safe. You deserve to be seen, to be loved, to be happy. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and I will see you in the next video.